Hello, my friends, and welcome to today's workshop. Today, we are going to be discussing teaching kids writing, teaching kids writing using narration, dictation, and copy work. Now, my friends, this is not a new concept. These ideas have been around for generations, plural. We're talking even Benjamin Franklin used some of these, employed some of these techniques to become a proficient and prolific writer. And we'll talk about some people who have used these that are famous writers to become the writers that they are. So this is what we're going to talk about. I'll be utilizing simplycharlottemason.com. These ideas were revived in the 19th century, or actually like written down in the 19th century by a 19th century educator by the name of Charlotte Mason. And then they were revived in the late 20th century. And so she's attributed to a lot of these ideologies. However, they were around prior to Charlotte Mason. Okay, so we're going to start off, just jump right in with narration. What is narration? Okay, narration is the act of a child retelling what they've read or heard in their own words or through other forms of expression to demonstrate understanding and make the information their own. It's not about summarizing or giving a factual account, but rather about actively processing and interacting with living ideas from a book, solidifying knowledge and fostering a lifelong habit of learning and thinking. Okay, so why is this effective? Well, it enhances comprehension, engagement, memory, critical thinking, emotional connection in stories, and in educational content. And it really is like you can tell a lot about like how much comprehension a child is doing or is like has with a text based on just discussing it with them and having them tell you about it and having a discussion. Julie Bogart, author of The Brave Learner, talks about asking children big, juicy questions as you're reading a text, that these things spur ideas and great, deep discussion. And I would say there is more profound learning that happens in those discussions than in a lot of other things that we do in conventional school. Like, let me give you a quiz on A Brave New World. Actually, I don't even think they read that anymore in schools. They did once upon a time. Okay, so the great thing is this is a simple practice that we can do at home. I feel bad because teachers in school would have a really difficult time doing narration with, 32 kids in a class or 25 kids in a class. But as parents, we can do this very, very easily. And we can do it with all of the kids. They don't all have to narrate the same, exact same passage back. You could take turns asking kids questions, but this is how we do it. The first thing we do is if it's a new text, we don't have to review what we read before, right? We're starting up with the brand new text. But if we have, like we're in the middle of a novel or in the middle of a story, then we want to take time to review, like, what did we just read? What were we reading about yesterday? What happened in the story yesterday? It's so funny because I naturally do this because I forget. Like, oh, what did we read about yesterday? I can't remember, and so the kids are really good about being, we read about, like, we were reading Heartwood Hotel, and Mona got really jealous of Tilly's little brother. And so she decided not to talk to Tilly or whatever, whatever. You have the child like help you remember what you're talking about. I love it. Take a moment to help your child recall where you left off. No, it's help the child, or the child is helping you remember where you left off. Okay, then you introduce today's reading. Today we're going to read chapter 2. And if you've already read ahead, then you can talk about, we're about to read about, what is going to happen next with the hotel or with, this character. Like, we were left at the cliffhanger with the chapter yesterday. Today we're going to find out what happens. And then 3 is the fun part. You actually read the story or read the passage, read the chapter, read the picture book, whatever you have chosen for narration. For the narration, you choose that. So you read it, and then you have the child tell you back what they read, what just happened in the story, and then ask them questions, discuss it. Why do you think that Mona was so frustrated with Tilly's little brother? What made her upset with Henry? Do you think that's fair that she was upset with Henry over such a little thing, or is she overreacting? What do you think? By the way, this is a real discussion that we had, Kara and I, as we were reading The Heartwood Hotel. I think it's book 2 or 3. No, it was book 3. What did you think about that? What's fascinating to me is, and that's it, right? That's it. That's all you do. Now, you can do it in writing as the kids get older. Sometimes, as a matter of fact, as we speak, as I'm doing this workshop, I have my 13-year-old is doing his quiet reading time. We call that QRT. That's from Sarah McKenzie, who wrote, who does the Read Aloud Revival. She calls it QRT, quiet reading time. And he is tasked with, once he reads his, for the 30 minutes, he's going to narrate via writing and write a paragraph about what he read about and what he thought about what he read. What are some of the conflicts? And so he now will do a handwritten narration. For younger children, that probably is too much. And so just verbally narrating is really good. One of the things that happens is they narrate. It helps their active listening skills, especially if they know that they're going to share back. But it also enables children to learn to articulate their thoughts verbally, which is a really powerful thing to do. My daughter, who is 17 and an avid reader, loves to narrate back all of the stories that she's reading on her own. And we've had some really profound discussions as we've read, as she's read and shared with me the things that she's been reading. So it's a powerful tool to do narration and then have a deep discussion about what you've read. Now, every day is not going to be a deep discussion, but having a discussion about what you read is a great thing. Okay. And allowing them to tell in their own words, to formulate their own thoughts and put it into words is a beautiful thing. Okay, so that's how we do narration. Now, I'm not going to practice narration with you today because it's a little tough when you're online. So, but we are going to practice dictation and copy work together. So now let's go on to, what is dictation? Dictation is a method for teaching spelling, grammar, and punctuation through prepared phrase-by-phrase dictation, where a child studies a literary passage, takes mental snapshots of its words, and then writes it down from memory as the parent reads it aloud. Okay, so some of the benefits of dictation: it teaches contextual learning. It builds attention to detail because they have to study the passage before they are going to write it. It develops listening skills. Again, much like narration, dictation also employs fantastic listening skills. It fosters a habit of good spelling so that they don't have to respell the words correctly, because you will make them respell the words if they do spell them incorrectly. And then it's a beautiful, seamless transition to writing as they start to formulate their own thoughts. Now, oftentimes you'll do copy work before dictation. And so in this presentation, I kind of did it a little bit backwards, but that's okay. We'll talk about copy work here next in a second. So oftentimes they'll do copy work first, and then later you'll do a dictation. And you could use the same passage that you did for copy work as dictation. You don't have to. But it helps transition into writing. Now, how do you do dictation? So dictation is super easy. The first thing you're going to do is you are going to choose a passage based on the child's ability or age. The passage can come from a book. It could be a poem. It could be a scripture. It could be any number of things. But you're going to choose a passage that's appropriate for the child's age. Now, older kids might have a longer passage. That's perfectly fine. Younger kids might have a sentence. That's okay too. So then you're going to look for unknown words and you're going to study them. Maybe you look them up with the child. You'll read the passage aloud to the child and then look for words that are interesting. You might point out things like contractions. You might point out um, words that might be unfamiliar to the child. You could look up in the dictionary. Have the child study that passage to prepare for the dictation. And then the next thing you're going to do is actually dictate the passage. So while they're writing, if you notice that they misspell a word or don't do like the contraction correctly, you can just take a little sticky note, like one of the little small ones, and just put it over their word after they've written it, because they're going to come back and rewrite that word. So you want to make sure that you don't break their concentration. So you could wait till the very end and then put the little sticky note over, rather than doing it while you're dictating. Just look at the passage and then put the sticky note, the little tiny sticky note, over the word, because they're going to respell it. Once you've repeated the passage several times, and I go slow with the kids, like I don't rush through it. This is not a race to see who gets it done fastest, but I'll go back, like I'll go slow, and you're going to repeat it several times until they get it. And then I'll put the sticky note on, and then I'll you redo those words, and the child can write over the sticky note, like on top of the sticky note, the correct word and how it's correctly spelled. And you do that until they get all of the spelling correctly, get it all correct. Okay, so that's dictation. It's actually pretty simple. So you and I are going to practice. Get out a piece of paper and a pencil. Put it on pause if you need to. Give you all, everyone here already has your piece of paper and pens and pencils. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so this is the passage that I've chosen for you guys from Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, chapter 1, page 1. Very famous passage, one of my favorites. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Now notice that there is an indentation. So this is the starting of a paragraph. So as you copy it, as I dictate it, remember that it's going to start with an indentation to signify that it's a new paragraph. It's a new thought. Notice the word universally. That's kind of a long word. Notice how it's spelled. There are 2 L's in it. And acknowledged. Oftentimes people forget the D in the middle of the word acknowledged. Notice that the knowledge is with the K is silent. So remember that. Acknowledge, the K is silent. And then notice the punctuation here. It's universally acknowledged, comma, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Now notice I'm not exclaiming it. So I'm going to give you a second to study the passage, and then we'll move on. Okay, let's do this. Here we go. I'm going to read it aloud and have you, as I dictate it, you're going to write it down, and then you're going to check yourself. I'll go back and then you can check yourself. And this is from my copy of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Here we go. It is a truth universally acknowledged. It is a truth universally acknowledged. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune, that a single man in possession of a good fortune, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Must be in want of a wife. Must be in want of a wife. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Must be in want of a wife. Do I need to slow it down for anybody? Okay, let's do this one more time. Here we go. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Okay, so let's go back. Now, because I'm not there to go and check out all your words, you can look at this. In the case of your children, you'd go back, you put those sticky notes over any misspelled words, and then you'd practice again with those words universally. If they misspell it again, put another sticky note over it. Let them see how it's correctly spelled. Take some time and then go back and practice the word correctly. So notice you should have had an indentation. You should make sure universally and acknowledged are spelled correctly. There is a comma, that a single man in possession of a good fortune, comma, must be in want of a wife, period. Okay, good job, guys. So let's move on to copy work. Now, copy work is one of the single most powerful things that we can do to teach our children to write. I'm very excited about this portion. What is copy work? Copy work is the discipline of copying another writer's work word by word. So this is what some famous writers have said about copy work. Here we go. I put up Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged. She wrote, I trained myself to write by copying the best passages from Victor Hugo and Dostoevsky. Here we go. Hunter Thompson wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, The Rum Diary. He said, I just wanted to feel what it felt like to write that well. I just type out pages of The Great Gatsby or A Farewell to Arms just to get the feel of it inside of me. Jack London, The Call of the Wild and White Fang. London reportedly copied work of Kipling and Stevenson to absorb their rhythm and their structure. And we're talking he would do like 20 pages of copy work a day. And that's how he developed his skill in writing. Robert Louis Stevenson, author of Treasure Island, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Whenever I read a book or a passage that particularly pleased me, in which a thing was said or an effect rendered with propriety, in which there was either some conspicuous force or some happy distinction in the style, I must sit down at once and set myself to ape that quality. Ray Bradbury, author of Fahrenheit 451 and The Martian Chronicles. If you want to write well, steal from the best. Copy their styles, learn how they structure their sentences, and then make it your own. Stephen King, for those of you who like horror. I'm not a big horror fan, but for those of you who like horror, you cannot hope to sweep someone else away by the force of your writing until it has been done to you. The best way to learn to write well is to read and copy the work of those who have done it best. Literally doing copy work. Ernest Hemingway. When I was learning to write, I'd copy out passages of writers like Turgenev because he wrote so well. He wrote Old Man and the Sea and For Whom the Bell Tolls. That's Ernest Hemingway wrote those. Dan Brown, author of The Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons. Brown has mentioned copying passages from great thrillers to study pacing and tension-building techniques. And it goes on and on and on. Robert Greene, The 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene's my 23-year-old's favorite author. And he's a psychologist and author. Benjamin Franklin. By the way, George Washington would copy the rules of civility so that he could memorize the rules of civility and also become a better writer. Benjamin Franklin. I took some of the papers and making short hints of the sentiment in each sentence, laid them by a few days, and then without looking at the book, tried to complete the papers again by expressing each hinted sentiment at length. So Benjamin Franklin went a step further and tried not only copying it, but copying it until he memorized it and then would go back and try to write it all out to see if he really got it. C.S. Lewis. The great man, just to be understood, must be translated into the vulgar tongue. If we do this with Homer, Shakespeare, or Virgil, we shall find we are learning to write. Anyway, it goes on. So, benefits. Whoops. Why is copy work effective? It focuses on granularity. Copy work forces a writer to slow down and scrutinize each word and sentence rather than just glossing over them as a reader might. It creates imprinting skills. It helps to imprint the mechanics of good writing onto the writer's mind and body, building a foundation for their work, for their own creative work. And then it teaches us to learn from the best. It provides a direct way to learn from the techniques of great authors, allowing writers to internalize the methods and apply them to their own writing. Now, I have to be honest. I was just listening to this one author, and I'm trying to remember. She's a YouTuber and she's an author and a literary expert. And she was homeschooled. She actually went to public school. And then when her dad saw how atrocious everything was as far as the actual academics went, he pulled her out to teach her. And one of the things that has shifted in writing in the last few decades is that children are not being taught to think as they write and to effectively write and analyze text, but rather to make inferences about their own feelings towards a text, as opposed to like gleaning what were they trying to say? Of course it's fine to go, okay, what does this mean for me? But also trying to understand, like, what was the author trying to convey and why? We've gone away from that. Now, when I pulled the kids to homeschool, Joshua, I had 2 adult kids. They had graduated from public school. And then I had my next 2 kids. I have 6 total. My next 2 kids were in middle school, about to go into high school. Now, my daughter had done very little in the way of writing, right? She had finished up 6th grade during COVID and was just learning, like, she was basically learning to write, starting to learn to write essays and paragraphs and essays, right? So she was still like in those, 12 years old, those emerging writing, that emerging writer phase. And I was just learning about copy work and narration and dictation, right? Well, one day she comes downstairs and she had been reading one of the later books in the Anne of Green Gables series. And she literally had copied several pages of the book, not because I told her to, but because she found that the prose so beautiful that she just had to write it down. Interesting thing is, we started homeschooling her she was 12 and a half when we started homeschooling her. And by age 14, we enrolled her in the state college. Now, my kids are bright, right? They're bright kids, but I think all kids are bright. Kids start to believe that they're dumb through school, which it's set up to do that on purpose. If you don't believe me, read the Weapons of Mass Instruction by John Taylor Gatto. You could also read The Deliberate Dumbing Down of the United States Education System by Isbert. That's a sobering book. So the interesting thing is, she took this English class as a 14-year-old. My son, Joshua, also took this English class as a 14-year-old. It was English Composition 1. They were in class with people that were in their 40s, along with, 20-somethings and lots of non-traditional students. And yet both of them got A's in their composition classes, both English Composition 1 and 2. And that's a whole nother story, because Katie realized, she's like, as long as I do exactly what the professor tells me, write exactly how they tell me, I'll get an A. It doesn't mean I've actually learned anything, but I'll get an A. Anyway, so she figured that out as a 13-year-old, or sorry, as a 14 turning 15-year-old. But she had been doing copy work. Joshua had been doing copy work, and they saw how good writers wrote. And so they, like, especially in Katie started seeing good flowing sentence structure. And I think that's one of the things that played into her passing English Composition 1 and 2 with flying colors. Okay, so how do we do copy work? We're going to choose a passage, and it needs to be tailored to the age and the level of the child, right? A younger child is not going to have long passages. They're not going to have as long as passages as a teenager, per se. Like, for example, you're going to select a short, well-written passage from a book, a poem, or other literary work that models good composition. It might be scripture. Yeah, Psalms are beautiful. You're going to display the passage neatly on a sheet of paper or a dedicated board for each child to see. For my older kids, I'll just give them the book and say, okay, copy it out of the book. Like, I don't have to rewrite it for them. You're going to read and discuss the passage aloud with the child, discussing any interesting vocabulary or concepts. And then you're going to have the child copy the passage word for word, exactly how it's written in their best handwriting, their best spelling, and punctuation. That you make sure they're going to copy it word for word. Now, it has been suggested for older kids, you can have them type it. That's fine too, when they are older. Unless you want them to work on their handwriting, which if you ever look at Joshua's handwriting, it's still terrible. And I would make him practice handwriting every single day, and it did not help. Anyway, then you're going to check for accuracy. You're going to have the child compare their copy to the original passage to identify any inaccuracies such as spelling or punctuation errors and correct themselves. You might have to point out some things too. Again, the text is right there in front of them the whole time, but you might at the end be like, oh, look at this here. And then have the child correct any identified mistakes to ensure the copy is an exact replica of the original. Now, you don't have to necessarily have them recopy the whole thing. You could have them do it like on the paper, like go over it with a different color. You could have them recopy it, but I found that it just wasn't worth the battle because they would just squawk. So you can just have them recopy that, or you could use the sticky note method as well and have them do it like you would with dictation. Okay, so let's do this together. I'm going to have you practice this. This is from Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And this, actually, I did not indent this one. Here's my Great Expectations book. Okay, so I messed up here a little bit in that it doesn't indent. So if I were doing this with my kids, I'd make sure that I had indented for the paragraph. So notice we've got this paragraph. We're talking about Miss Havisham in the story. Now, oftentimes it's really good to use text that the child is familiar with or something that you're actually reading at the time. It doesn't have to be, but if you get desperate, just use whatever you can. So notice, let's read it together. Saving for the one weird smile at first, I should have felt almost sure that Miss Havisham's face could not smile. It had dropped into a watchful and brooding expression, most likely when all the things about her had become transfixed, and it looked as if nothing could ever lift it up again. So what do we learn about Miss Havisham? She's not recovering from this, right? What do you think it means, brooding? What is a brooding expression? How about we look that up? We take some time to look it up. So we might look that up. Brooding. What transfixed? It had become transfixed. What does transfix mean? Let's look up transfixed. So you might take the time to look up transfixed with a child if this is what they were doing. Notice the M dash there. When would we use an M dash? Okay, much like a comma, it allows us to have a thought within the sentence, another thought. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and take a couple minutes and copy this on your paper. Now, what I do want you to do is I want you to go ahead and indent for saving because it is a new paragraph and I messed up there, but go ahead and indent. So we're going to take a few minutes to do this ourselves. Okay, how did you do? I want you to, let's correct it. Oh, did you notice? How'd you do with the Havishams that we've got a contraction there? Or sorry, not a contraction. We have a possessive noun. We're talking about Miss Havisham's face. So we're going to use an apostrophe up there. So let's look at how you did with your copy work. Now, correct anything that needs to be corrected. All right, how'd you do? Okay, so that is how we do narration, dictation, and copywork questions. Okay, one question that I have is how often do we do this? Now, you don't have to do like all of them every single day. You could do like 3 times a week and be like, okay, Mondays we're going to do narration, Wednesdays we're going to do copywork, dictation we'll do on Fridays. There's other things like reverse dictation. I did not get into that today. So you could break it up and you could do copy work every single day. You could do like, every day this week, we're just going to work on narration. And then every day next week, we're going to work on copy work. And I think the most effective way for us is doing a little bit of each week. So we're going to do some narration. We're going to do some copy work. We're going to do some dictation. So you can, do it throughout the week, or maybe you do it a couple times a week. It's really up to you. The more that a child practices, the better they're going to get at it. Especially as they get older, the better that they're going to get. And as they get older, we're going to introduce more things like talking about fictional writing and storytelling and things like that, essay writing and things like that. But this is something that we do want to practice on a regular basis. Any other questions? Okay, with that, next month we are doing it because Thanksgiving falls on the third week and the third week of the month. We'll be doing Christmas School on November 5th. Y'all, this is a workshop that you don't want to miss. And so please be sure that you come to November 5th's Christmas School. I love Christmas and I love preparing Christmas for homeschooling. It is so magical and so wonderful. Last year, we talked about making a magical Christmas and different ways that you can do that. You can check that out on YouTube. That's still up. It's so fun, so delightful, so wonderful. But this year, we're going to talk about some things you could do for Christmas school. And I've got some goodies up my sleeve for those of you who come live to the class. I've got some fun treats that you can win, things that I'd have to send to you in the mail where you could get actual packages. So be sure that you come to that live. Otherwise, you'll miss getting the treats and the fun goodies and the surprises. So with that, we will see you next month and we will talk to you later.